What we want to discuss today is basically an introduction to Java programming language itself. We did begin to understand what Java is about or why we would want to learn Java in the introduction to the course. Having said that, I would want to dig deeper. We want to go more into the understanding of what makes Java so special. So we will discuss more into that, and of course, as is usual, during the discussion I would want you to interject me with questions whenever you have any, even small doubts. Please stop me and ask me. Do not wait for the session to end and then ask questions. I would rather be appreciative if at all you stop me in between. This is meant to be a discussion oriented session, and I'll be asking questions, you answer, and whenever you have doubts, you ask questions and I will answer back. All right? So let's keep that flow, and kind of to break the ice of sorts, let me begin with a simple question so that we kind of start having the sentences to flow back and forth. All right? So tell me, what is the thing that you use? It's a very silly question, but I'll ask you nonetheless. What is the thing that you use to cut grass in the lawn, to cut hair on a man's head, and to put a nail into the wall? I'll repeat the question again for you. What is it you are going to use to cut the hair on that man's head, to cut the grass on a lawn, and to put a nail into the wall? What is it you are going to use? I want you to answer.
Hammer.
So, sorry, say that again.
Hammer.
You will use hammer. But how do you use hammer to cut the grass? Right? Okay. Hammer is not incorrect. Yes? Hands. What do you mean? You will hold somebody's jut and then pluck it out of his head or what? I understand that you will use hands for all these three operations, but what is it that you will use? You can't use only hands, is it not? What is it you will use?
The same equipment.
Same?
Equipment you are using for all.
Very good. That's a question to ask. Yes, anybody else? You want a single answer? I just want one answer. But what is your question? You're right. Very good. So remember, when I ask you, what is it you use to cut the hair on a man's head, cut the lawn, mow the grass, so to say, and put a nail into the wall, our mind thinks that how many things you need to think about is only. What is your mind telling you? What are you searching for? You're searching for a tool, right? How many tools are you searching for? You are searching for one tool, is it not? The moment I tell you what is it you are going to use for three different actions, you naturally tend to assume that how many things I'm asking you to think about is only one. Who told you? That's why, Janaka, what you asked and what you asked here is perfectly bang on. Remember, I want you to approach today's session and tomorrow's session with an open mind. And the one thing I don't want you to do is to, as we discussed in the prior introduction, assume. You understand? The moment I say, what is it you are going to use to cut the grass and cut the man's hair on the man's head, you are thinking, the scissor, if you put it on man's head, his head only might get cut off. Is it not? And that's how our mind thinks. You can't obviously put on his head a lawn mower as well, right? And clearly, how do you use the scissor to put the nail into the wall? The whole question, the whole thing I want you to approach this discussion as is without assumptions, right? Maybe you know certain things that we will be discussing today. Some of you might have gone through our video classes, which means today will be a repeat. Some of you are from computer science background, which basically means that you might have already learned some amount of Java, which means some of the things I'm going to discuss today again will be a repeat. Having said that, allow me to take every one of us through the introduction. At the same time, remember, we are going to start from scratch, but we are going to go into depth. A little bit more of an insight of what you might already know. But how do I want you to approach this discussion is without assumption, so feel free to ask me questions. By the way, the answer to this silly question is three things. You use scissors for cutting the hair, a lawnmower for cutting the lawn, and you use a hammer to put the nail into the wall. That's it. The question never said, tell me one thing, is it not? That's what we think about or assume. So, no more assumptions in the class. Feel free to ask me questions whenever. I keep asking in between such questions to kind of keep the communication going. All right, very good. You guys are super smart. All right, so let's get started with the session. So we began the discussion by saying that we want to learn Java programming language, and we said, why do we want to learn Java programming language? First of all, is because Java is used by developers to build what type of applications? Remind me. What type of applications quickly? Web applications, mobile applications, embedded and desktop, isn't it? In web, particularly what type of applications are used to build Java, used to build by Java? Yes, enterprise web applications. So there are two kinds of web applications. You can classify them as public facing web apps and enterprise web apps, just for our understanding. Enterprise web apps are the ones which automate business rules. They will actually automate the entire operations of a particular business. Public facing web apps could be things like, your Twitter and Facebook and whatnot, which faces the end user per se. It is not oriented towards the business. Having said that, there is a very thin line between the two. So for enterprise web apps, for mobile apps, that is specifically Android based apps, and for your desktop and embedded apps, what is the programming language that is used of choice is Java programming language. We said, just to throw some metrics at you, there are 25 million Java developers developing Java applications on a daily basis. And there are about 3 billion smart cards. You know that smart cards which you swipe to open the door? So they are powered by Java, right? Embedded. So 3 billion plus smart cards are powered by Java. There are 150 million desktops which have Java installed on it. And clearly 1.5 billion Android devices run on the Java platform. So clearly, just to understand, Java is everywhere on the 4 different domains, used by millions and billions of people. And millions of people are developing applications on a day in and day out basis. So we said, that is the reason why we want to get into it. Why? Because there are more people using it, there are more companies hiring Java developers, there are more vacancies in Java, the ecosystem is very rich, and which is one of the main reasons why we want to learn this. At the same time, we understand that when was Java released is around 95-96, after all these big languages like C, C++ were there in the market for quite some time. And after Java also there have been many languages released, but yet for the last 20 years which has been number one as a programming language of choice for developers to build application is Java. So today's discussion is all about understanding why Java is numero uno. What is it about the language that makes it advantageous? I am sure at a high level you have already learnt about platform independence and all the other advantages and buzzwords associated with Java. I will be talking about the same. However, I will try to go a little more deeper than what you might already know, and at the same time I'll create it as a nice story for you so that you know exactly how things panned out. Now, this is what we'll be discussing in the next 2 hours, so feel free to, as I said, ask me questions as and when. Having said that, we said Java is a programming language, right? Now, my first question to you is, what do we use a programming language to do? We obviously use a programming language to build a program, right? You're going to use it to build a program. Remember, I've told you we'll start from scratch. I am not going to assume you know anything. I'm sure you know already, but I will assume you know nothing, so that let's start from the beginning itself, and let's go quickly though, all right? So tell me, define me what a program is, please. What's a program? Set of instructions. Very good. All right, so a program is nothing but a set of instructions. Okay, cool. The set of instructions given to who? I mean, instruction means there should be somebody who should take the instruction. No, whom do you give the instruction to? OS, processor. Very good. So you are going to give the set of instructions to somebody who understands the instructions, is it not? Now think about it. Program is mainly going to be executed by who? What do we call it? Earlier you would say, what would execute a program, or only what would execute a program? Can I use this pen to execute a program? Yeah. So what do you need to execute a program? Not a compiler, a device, right? I mean, earlier we would say computer, but nowadays we don't say computer, because computers are not the only things that can execute programs. Your mobile can execute programs, your Google Glass can execute programs, your cameras can execute programs, your fridge and TV and all these devices can execute programs, isn't it? So basically, set of instructions let's say given to a device, right? So I will say device instead of a computer. But again, when you say give it to a device, how do you ask this device to execute your instructions? Is it not? The device must have something, some capability to be able to execute. Now, we are going to elaborate on this, and I'm sure you know it, but I've promised you to stitch a nice story. I'm going to stitch a story of how programming evolved, right from the inception and how it has come into existence until now, until Java and until now as well, so that we can understand the story of programming. Tell me now, why would we want to build this set of instructions at all? Why are we interested in building a program? I'm sure all of us know, but just I want to ask you, what is the reason why we want to build a program in the first place? To perform some tasks, to automate some tasks rather, right? So when you say to automate some task or perform some tasks, tell me, before the computer and the device existed, who were performing those tasks? Humans were performing those tasks. I and you were performing those tasks, is it not? So clearly, what is it we want to be able to do is to automate a set of tasks that a human being is able to do, but now with the help of a computer or a device. Is it not? That is what a program is all about. To automate a task which a human being can perform on its own, but now can be done by a device. Why are we interested in replacing a human task with a program and by using a machine at all? To save time, right? To save time. Okay, but why would we want to save time? Are you saying that, is it that the computers are faster and a human being could do things a little slowly and the computer can be faster, which is why that is the primary benefit? Your saving time is definitely right, no doubts about it, but tell me more.
Reduce the tasks.
To reduce the
Tasks.
very good. So, and accuracy as well. Very good. So please note, as a human being, we are fundamentally very good at something. What are we really good at? Clearly, we are just like an animal. We have the physical stature as any animal does, maybe a little bit different. I'm sure you know that I and chimpanzee share 99.99% of similarities, right? So clearly there is a very few fundamental differences in the physical stature. Having said that, what is it we human beings have, which obviously an animal does not, is a they also have a brain, man. What do we have that they don't possess as we do, at least? So language is an outcome of we possessing something.
Thinking.
You know where, okay, you know what is the root word of man, right? Where did the man word, English word, where did they come from? All English words, they have come from which language? More or less, not all the words, but the root is from which language? Greek, Roman? Wrong. I'm telling you, the only cradle of humanity which existed way longer, way much before in the past, when all the Americans and the UK and the Australians were playing with monkeys, was which country? Yeah, our country, man, our country. All the majority of the words have been influenced from Indian language, you see, primarily Sanskrit. Where does man come from? You don't know? A man is somebody who has a manas. A man is a man if he has a mind. Is it not? What is it that a chimpanzee has? Is a brain. 99% same man. For all you know, if you give a chimpanzee a computer, it will belt out Java code. Right? But clearly what is the distinction between me and the chimpanzee is I have a manas. That's why man is nothing but a short form of manas. जो जिसकी है वो मनस, जिसकी है मनस वो ही है man. क्योंकि in Hindi, I'm very bad at Hindi, but basically what is the sandhi or samasa is whoever has manas has a man. When they said man, English people, finally it became man, you see. So man is nothing but the one who has a manas, the one who can think, isn't it? And the one who can think is the one who needs language, because we can't. Can you think in symbols? Can you think now? Think, let's see, think in symbol, star symbol, plus symbol, minus symbol. Now you can't think in symbols. We need language. So language is an outcome of we having a mind, isn't it? And what does our mind do? We think, right? That's what the manas does. We think and we emote. Two things we do. We have thoughts and we have emotions, both of which are a function of manas, right? Yeah, that's why you don't ever see a tiger or a dog, sitting quietly and saying, "Ivat nanu bhala bore agogide. You see, I am depressed in life. Okay, what is this? Every day I have to get up and run and catch some prey. And just today I am really bored. I'm just going to sit down and loiter around. No animal does that, you see, because they don't have a manas as big as ours or as ours. Having said that, what is it we are very capable in doing is thinking, and specifically, what thinking are we very good in? Creative thinking. Not only are we good in creative thinking, we love creative thinking. Tell me, I say, if at all your mother or father or brother or somebody comes and tells you the same thing, 3 times or 4 times, what do you feel? Why are you keeping, like for example, why are you keeping your clothes in this particular closet? Okay, your wife or mother or father will come and tell you, why are you keeping your clothes on this closet? After 5 minutes, why are you keeping your clothes in this closet? 3rd time, why? Bitwadappa, I know what you are going to ask, is it not? What do we hate? Are repetitions. We hate repetitions. We get completely bored of repetitions, is it not? What we love is new things, creative things, because that sparks our mind and our manas always wants to churn out new thinking, new thoughts, right? We are good at this. What we are very bad at is repetitive things, repetitive tasks. We are terrible at it. Like for example, let me prove it to you right now. I'm sure many of you know this, but just play around. When I ask you a question, please answer out, all right? Tell me, all of you know addition or not? Come on, we are engineers, we are punters in addition and integration and the differentiation, and we have done Fourier transforms and whatnot. So addition is what I'm going to ask you about, all right? Quickly you got to answer me a sum. So tell me, 1030 plus 1030 is how much? See, many of you are thinking, idrili, right? So don't think, shout out, okay? 2060? Yes or no? Add 10. 2070, right? Very good. Add 30, how much is it? 3000. Correct, no? 2060 plus 10 is 2070. I asked you to add 30, 3000. Then I am going to give you this much money, you give me this much back money, okay? Clearly. Many of us fall for this trap. It's a trap question, right? I mean, you think about it a little bit. I know you know that 3000 is not the answer, but it is 2100. Oh, why do we make such mistakes? Do we not know mathematics? Should we now go back to the 2nd standard? Hey, madam, clearly, what we are bad at doing is repetitive things. You can come up with amazing solutions for solving, I don't know, satellite problems, rocket problems. But you ask even a PhD holder this question, he will make a mistake. The reason is, as human beings, we hate repetitive tasks and we are error prone. We make mistakes. Even in the simplest of things, we make a mistake, man. Every day we wear a dress from our childhood. But very oftenly one button will go to that side and that button will come to this side, is it not? So we make mistakes. That is who we are. That's why there's a definition for a human, you see. To dash is to be human, I'm sure you know. To err is to be human. You have not heard this? To err is to be human means, if you are a human being, you better do mistakes. If you are a person who doesn't do mistakes, first double check. Are you human being or computer? You see, because to err is to be human is the fundamental definition of a human being. Now, coming back, because we are bad at repetitive tasks, we are slow at repetitive tasks, and 2, whenever we are given repetitive tasks, we are error prone. Clearly, if you now look at the functioning of our world around us, you will see that most of the tasks are repetitive in nature. Like take for example, you go to a shop and you go buy certain items. Now when you buy certain items, what should that shop vendor do? He needs to give you a bill. The bill will contain all the items that you have bought, the quantity, the unit price into the quantity is the actual amount, plus some amount of tax, and finally comes the total, and that is the amount of money he needs to collect from you and give you the bill, isn't it? Now, every time customers go and buy things from the shop, is this the one person who is supposed to calculate the bill? Is he doing the same task again and again and again, or different tasks is he doing? It's the same task. What is changing are probably the items and the quantity and the price. But the actual task that he is doing to calculate the bill is exactly the same thing. So that's what we call as Repetitive. And again, when he does it again and again, what will he do or make? Mistakes, is it not? So clearly, if you see the gamut of things that human beings do, calculate payroll for example, right? Every month you join a company, you need to be given pay. Yes or no? I mean, that's why we go to job man, right? For that pay day at the end of the month. So we are anxiously waiting for it. So imagine, I mean, has to be somebody who is going to calculate how many days an employee attended the company, what is his base salary, what is his taxation, income tax that needs to be filed, and what is the bonus or overtime that needs to be given. And he has to apply all of these rules, come up with a figure, and that is the payout that needs to happen. Again, a repetitive task to calculate payroll. If you just keep on noticing our life in and around us, you will see that majority of the tasks that the majority of the tasks that are required are repetitive in nature. And clearly, who are doing all these are human beings, but then we always used to make mistakes. That's why what got invented is a computing device, a computer of sorts, right? What was the original reason for creating a computer? Only one reason. The computer was created so that it can do repetitive tasks without getting bored. It can do repetitive tasks quickly and at the same time without making any errors. Clearly, if we have such a computing device, can we replace a human being with this device or not? Absolutely yes, is it not? But then let's understand, how do we function? We said we can creatively think and we have the ability to perform tasks. Let's try to understand the fundamentals of how we as a human being perform tasks in the first place. Look at it from a physical point of view, right? So as a human, tell me, the entity which we use to perform tasks obviously is our body and mind, correct, no? This is the main instruments that we have, that all of us possess. But more specifically, let's look at it from a physical nature, because usually what do we call mind as? Or what do we call, the body is the hardware, your mind is the software, OS, you see. It is the OS that controls the hardware, is it not? Yes or no? Okay. Now tell me, in the body, what is the main engine that we have which has the ability to understand instructions? Brain, right? So obviously all of us have a brain, in bracket hopefully. Just kidding. Allow me to pull your leg from time to time. We have a brain. And the brain has the ability to understand instructions, right? Of course, we need to know some elementary language which we would have learned, and through that we understand commands. If you call somebody and say, hey, go there, he will either say, Hoktini, either Yako. Either ways, he has understood and he is trying to comply to the command or rebut it. Having said that, brain is the most important engine of sorts in our body. However, clearly the body should have an ability to accept inputs, is it not? What is it we use to accept inputs? Obviously, what is it we use to accept inputs? Where are all the data coming from? Hello? From the 5 what? Senses, right? We have 5 sense organs. You have your eyes, the primary sense organ. You have your ears, you have your touch, you have your taste, and you have your what? Smell. I forgot something. Yeah. Right. So, got it. So you have 5 sense organs, right? And how are these sense organs oriented? Are they projected outside of the body or inside of the body? Yeah, you can roll your eyes inside and look at your heart. Norta is our heart hengi deta. Nah, they are all projected outside. From the outside, we are garnering and gathering inputs, isn't it? That is what we call as data, right? So clearly, you have the sense organs, and these sense organs are the primary instruments through which what comes in from outside of the world is data. So your smell data, your vision data, and so on and so forth, right? Now what is the brain very good in doing? It is getting humongous amount of data. Every second, we are taking through all the 5 senses in parallel all the data. And now what does the brain know to do? The most important characteristic of the brain is to execute. No, not execute. Execute comes later. Yeah.
Store and separate.
Store. Yeah. So it knows how to segregate, right? Store and separate, as rightly said. It knows how to reject unwanted data, right? 99% of the times the data that is coming in is not required, not relevant for us, is it not? Only some amount of data is relevant. So it is a very good pattern matcher. The brain knows how to understand pattern matching. Like for example, if there are 100 people and you simply see the people once, immediately, hey, nam uncle tarane idane. Not really, man, but I'm saying. So, is it not? I mean, how our brain is so capable that one small glance and we know exactly who is who. Bottom line, what is our brain going to do is to accept the data, reject the unwanted data, and identify by pattern matching the relevant data and probably store it. Normally, to store the data, what is it that the brain has, or a compartment of brain is called as? Where do we store the data? Yes. Your memory, right? Yes or no? And what are the forms of memory, typical forms of memory, or how many types? Two types. Two types. What and what? No, RAM and RAM. Where is your RAM? Where is your RAM? We are coming to the computer yet, alright? But I'm talking to you still from the human body point of view. Our human body's brain has a memory. What are the two types of memory? Short-term memory and long-term. Yes or no? Like for example, before you came into the class at whatever time, you probably came in through a bus or you drove something, you drove your bike, etc. Do you remember exactly what happened or not? Exactly. Some of you are thinking, no, I'm just saying, you remember exactly what happened 1 hour ago, isn't it? But tell me, at 10 o'clock on November 1st, same time, 1 hour ago, at 10 o'clock on November 1st, exactly what happened? Do you remember? I mean, you'll have to think hard. So clearly, you'll have to think backwards a lot, isn't it? So why do you remember what happened to you today very quickly is because where the data that is incoming through the senses are stored first by the brain is in your short-term memory, isn't it? And what does the brain regularly do is majority of the short-term memory it purges, it deletes. But the ones which is important, it stores it into long-term memory, isn't it? So some important things you will remember. On November 1st, hey, that person came, I looked at him and I said, I gave him my resume, he said he will call me. I remember he has not called only. You see, you remember a major event that happened, but might not be all the minute details. Bottom line, why, how is that so? Is short-term data, memory data is stored into long-term. Quick question, when does the human body store data from short-term memory to long-term memory? Like, do you tell your brain now, Iga, take from this RAM and put it into that RAM? Now, you don't do all that, right? When it all happens subconsciously, right? When does it happen? No, you're not understanding my question. When does the data go from short-term memory to long-term memory? I gave you a clue now.
Whenever it's important.
When you malaga, man. When you sleep and you dream, what do you think is happening? All the short-term data of that day is getting purged and only the relevant ones are moving into long-term. That is why yesterday night before you went to sleep, what happened and what it all happened, you don't remember it as clearly as from the point of time you woke up. You see, because every time when you wake up, short-term memory is completely clean, wiped out, deleted, fresh, you see. And that's how our human body works. Now, what did we say? Humans are bad doing repetitive tasks. Humans do also errors and they are fundamentally slow. So what we wanted to invent was a device which replicates a human being and a device which can take over all the human mundane tasks so that human beings can be free of their time to do what? What humans are good at for doing? Creative thinking. And remember, creative thinking is what is the primary attribute that is required for dash solving. Problem solving. For any problem to be solved, you need to think creatively because most of the problems that we might get will be new problems. You need a new way of looking at things, isn't it? So which is the reason why? What is it we are interested in doing? Taking the humans from doing the mundane, repetitive, error-prone work and giving them creative problem solving so that they can take on more challenges. But to be able to do that, we said we need to create a device, and that is where a computer was created. We will just call it a device. So because we wanted to mimic a human being, we replicated the same aspect. What is the main engine of your device which has the ability to understand instructions? Processor, is it not? So the processor is the brain of the computer which has the ability to understand instructions clearly. All these processors, give me some examples of processors please. 8059. Intel is the name of a company. Just saying, all the different processors that are there. Intel processors, your AMD processors, and your Qualcomm processors, etc., right? 8051, 8059, 8060, 8058. 8086, right, 8085, and all those things we might have learned in our education. Bottom line, they are all different processors. Quickly tell me, do all the processors understand the same set of commands? Okay, tell me more then. Each processor understands what? A fixed set of commands, is it not? It's not as capable as our human brain, right? You can teach a kid to learn any language, any number of commands, and as we grow as well, we keep learning. We have not reached the stage of intelligence where we can mimic such a factor in a computing device. Having said that, all processors they understand a fixed set of instructions. We call that the instruction set, is it not? Based on which there is the important classification of processors. What is the classification of processors, please? Your restricted instruction set, mixed instruction set, complex instruction set. Hey, hello, electronics and computer science guys. Hello. Oh, okay, all right. You know that, right? So you have RISC processors, MISC processors, etc. So what are all these? These are all different type of instruction sets that they understand. Bottom line, every processor, I want you to understand, only understands a few set of instructions. We call that as commands. Everybody clear? That means you want to tell the processor to do anything. In what language you need to speak is in the language that the processor understands, obviously, in those commands only. Having said that, having only the brain is useless. Remember, what is it our body has is a brain, but to collect the inputs we have sense organs. Similarly, what is it that is connected to the processor which will allow us to pass inputs to the processor? Yeah, Janak, a little louder. So clearly, you have all your peripherals, like you have your mouse and your keyboard and your monitor and your printer and your USB and the network and whatnot, is it not? Are all these different ways of collecting data or not? Collecting the data, also spitting out the data. You might want to spit out the data to a monitor, spit out the data to a network, spit out the data to a particular USB device, etc. Then, so all these are peripherals. They mimic our sense organs in a way. Yes or no? They mimic our sense organs. Then, to be able to hold the data, what is very importantly required? Obviously, just like our brain, we need memory. And as you already said, there are two types of memory, short term and long term. Short term memory is nothing but RAM, and long term memory is ROM. Well, basically your RAM, which is nothing but your 4 GB RAM, 8 GB RAM that you have in your device, ROM is nothing but your hard disk, where you have files which stores the data in a permanent manner, is it not? Here you get data persistence as such. Bottom line, does this now, a processor with the peripherals and the memory, does it mimic our human body or not? Yes, the physical aspect definitely yes. But remember, just the physical aspect is not enough. Somebody should govern the working of these peripherals, govern the working of this processor, etc. We need some softer element, subtler element, which controls all of these things. That is nothing but your OS. That is nothing but what we call as mind, isn't it? In our physicality, we call it the subtler aspect, mind. You cannot go ask a person, hey, manas torsu, right? Show me the mind. Right? I mean, you can show all the organs of the body, but you can't show the mind because obviously it's a subtler aspect. So same way, OS is what is superimposed on the physical hardware, which understands how to manage all these resources. Everybody clear? This is a simple story, all of us know. I'm trying to stitch it together nicely for you, that's all. Alright, coming back now. What is it we are interested to do? Is to give commands to this processor to use the peripherals to accept data, to store some data in the temporary memory, manipulate the data, whatever data is important, push the data to long-term memory and spit out outputs in your monitor, etc. Can you safely say that that is what is the program or not? So, what is the program? Is a bunch of instructions given to who in your machine? Processor in your machine. To do what first? Accept inputs and then manipulate the data. Store the data in RAM and ROM and spit out the output to your output peripherals. That is what we call as a program. And clearly, that is what we also call from a human point of view as a task. Because what does a human being do for a task? He accepts input from the sense organs, uses his brain to manipulate the data, store some data temporarily, write down some data permanently, and gives a deterministic output to his supervisor or whatever. Clearly, that is exactly what we can now mimic by building a program. Everybody clear why we are interested in building a program? So we understood what is the program, what is the benefit of this program now, are clearly we do not have these two disadvantages. For one, the beauty of a computer is it never gets bored. Correct now? It never gets bored. You can ask it to execute the same repetitive work any number of times. And two, it never makes mistakes. Whatever you ask it to do, it will do it in the same way 1 billion times without making mistakes. That means, have we removed the disadvantages of the human being? Have we got the extra benefit of speed of execution? Yes or no? Clearly, that was what was the necessity, for which reason what got invented or what got created were devices, computer devices with programs. Everybody clear? But this is what we are interested in, fine. But how do you give the program? Remember, set of instructions should be in what format? Who should be able to understand these instructions? Is your processor. But processor understands only a limited set of instructions. I'm sure many of you had assembly lab. One day I came out of the assembly lab. At my time in engineering, we learned 8085. What is the processor you learned? 8085 only. 8586. That's all. One number difference. After 15 years, that's the difference between me and me. One number difference. Anyway, just kidding. So 8086 is a very nice processor to learn actually. Having said that, it was in our time it was 8085, and we had an assembly lab. And one day after spending the entire day in the lab, I came out of the lab and I said, yes. The professor was going, what did you do? I said, get better, sir. I accomplished. I'm very, very happy today. He said, fantastic, shabash, my boy. What did you accomplish? I said, I calculated, LCM of two numbers. Given two numbers, LCM. That's all. And he had a question mark on his face. LCM. Third standard boy knows how to do LCM. You understood how to do LCM? I said, yes, I know how to build a program for LCM in 8085. He said, Adikyan Atkushi, why are you so happy? I'm sure if you relate to your lab, you will understand. To even achieve that stupid LCM calculation, you have to write some 500 statement execution. Move A to B, add A to C, go to there and come back quickly. Yes or no? The processor is like a small chotu kid, na? It is a stupid thing. I mean, it understands hardly few instructions, and you now need to communicate with only those instructions to the processor. So making it achieve bigger things, is it a easy thing or is it very difficult? It is, right? Yes. So it is extremely difficult, irritating to do even the smallest of things in the way the processor understands. So coming back, we want to build a set of instructions. We want the processor to execute, but we don't like speaking in the language the instruction set the processor understands, because the instruction set is very poor. It is like you talking to a 1-year-old kid and asking the 1-year-old kid to do something for you. It is almost frustrating, is it not? Because either they will not understand, or if they don't understand, they don't want to do it. That's how a processor is. That's why what got invented, so that we can build the instructions not in the instruction set that the processor understands, but a higher level vocabulary. Like for example, using English. What got invented?
Software.
No, software is very generic. Let's make it more specific. Come on, what got invented? It's on the board. What got invented so that I and you as developers can build programs easily in English?
Programming language.
Yes, programming languages. I am telling you without assumptions right from day one how programming has evolved. So once we understood that we need to mimic a human being in a device, we understood that what a human being has physically and as a subtle aspect, we need to have the same thing in the device. Once we understood that a program is nothing but a bunch of instructions given to the brain of the machine, which is the processor, we said we cannot build the instructions in the format that the processor understands, because we will take too long a time to even achieve the smallest of things. As I told you, 6 hours I wrote program to achieve one Jujube LCM program, right? It is, to calculate LCM should take you 2 minutes to build a program, isn't it? Not 6 hours, because that's how much time it takes for us to solve it on paper. That's why what got invented was a programming language. I'll be very quick. We had low-level programming languages, high-level programming languages. In these so-called high-level programming languages, in what format will you build the instructions? English. Clearly now, are we more capable in building instructions in English in compared to assembly code, machine code or not? Definitely yes. Remember, You and I have coded in assembly, but the processor understands actually machine code, which is even more lower form. So clearly we do not want to code in machine code. We do not want to learn assembly programming. We do not want also to be very specific to one processor only. Ideally speaking, whether it's Intel processor or AMD processor, why do I care? My program should be able to run on any of them. Clearly, I need a mechanism to build my instruction in a higher level language, ideally English level language, and that's why what got invented were programming languages. Now, clearly, if you see the device now from a physical architecture point of view, at the lowest level of your device, what do we say we have is your hardware, right? All the different peripherals are there connected to the device. Of course, you have your processor with memory is there in your motherboard. They are interfaced with the peripherals using bus, wires, and so on and so forth. Now, what manages this physical hardware we observed is your OS. Very complicated software, but we don't need to bother about it. It's already well established and gowned. Having said that, any program we are going to build, it is going to sit on top of the OS, is it not? Are we going to build a program to directly interact with the hardware? No way. We are going to interact with the hardware only in conjunction, in combination with communication with OS. Now, to be able to do this, what is it we need is a programming language, is it not? So, just to tell you a long history in a quick sentence, there were many programming languages that were created. There were so many programming languages. I'm sure you have heard of Fortran and BASIC and COBOL and Pascal and so many, right? A and B and whatnot. Many languages were created. All these languages gave you the ability to create your instructions in English. But then, by the way, if you simply create it in English, you cannot execute it, right? As some of you said already. We need to convert the higher level English instructions into the lower level machine specific machine instructions. What we call as machine code, binary code, object code. Machine code, binary code, object code. Nothing but means instructions in the format which who understands? Processor understands. So tell me now, what is it we use to convert from the higher level English format to the lower level machine code format? Typically your software like your compilers. So that's why along with programming languages, what got invented were compilers. Clearly, we create the instructions in high level English commands, but please note, can the English commands be free flowing like language? No. We have to still understand the rules of how we use English commands, right? That is what we call the syntax and semantics of the programming language. So whenever you learn any programming language, you need to understand the rules, the vocabulary. Like for example, even in English, you have letters A to Z, you have digits 0 to 9, and you need to understand the standard conjunctions and all the different prepositions and nouns and pronouns and all the different forms of creating those words. Only then can we make instructions as sentences. So in a similar format, clearly what has to be done by a developer now is if he wants to build such a program to automate a task, he has to understand the syntax and semantics of a programming language, create the set of instructions in high level English conforming to those syntax, convert high level English syntax using the compiler into typically machine code. What is machine code? Machine code is nothing but a set of instructions that who understands? Processor understands. Once I have machine code, can I ask the processor to execute it or not? Absolutely yes. And once I build machine code, I can ask the processor to execute it any number of times and it will beautifully do the job interacting with the peripherals, storing the data in memory, long term, short term, arithmetic calculations, graphics calculations, etc. etc. Now, coming back. So many programming languages got created, right? Fortran, BASIC, so on and so forth. Why were so many programming languages created? Because each programming language gave different capabilities to interact with the OS and interact with the hardware. So there was a number of evolution cycles that happened, so to say, until a programming language was released, which everybody in the world understood that this is the most powerful programming language of all time. Tell me, which is the most powerful programming language of all time? Clearly C, is it not? Once a C programming language was created, people said, developers said, this is it. There cannot be any other language which is more powerful than this. That's it. There cannot be anything more. Why? Because first of all, the programming language syntax is purely in English. The syntax is very structured and easy to understand. And second, most importantly, using a C program, what is it I can communicate to is your OS. What do you call those So OS, it interfaces with your hardware and it exposes all the hardware capabilities. It exposes all the hardware capabilities via something. What do we call that something as? My God. System calls or functions, native calls, whatever you call it, right? System functions or native calls, right? So all of these are nothing but the OS capable functionality which is exposed as functions to the programmer. So now, using C, can I invoke all these system calls and utilize all the hardware capabilities or not? Hello? Can I take input from the keyboard using a C program? Can I print some output to the monitor? Can I print some output to the printer? Can I read some data from a USB? Can I push some data to a network, to some device or to a LAN? Of course yes. Which means, can I use the complete capabilities of the processor, the memory and all the peripherals in conjunction with the OS or not? That's it. Definitely you can. That's why what was C touted and called as is the most powerful language. Because you have complete power over your system. Your system, which is nothing but your OS and your hardware, you have complete power using the C language. That's why people thought there is no necessity for any other language at all. So for a long period of time, people started developing applications in C, left, right and center. For about a decade, 10 years, people started building applications only on C, and people did not even think of building a new language. Why is it even necessary? Because you have complete power over the underlying system. Are you with me so far? We are coming to Java. We have not yet come there. We're going to come there shortly, alright? So we are talking about the storyline in the 1970s and 80s now, right? At that point in time, C was super popular and people said, this is it really. Having said that, yes, C is very, very powerful, no doubts. But over a period of time, people started seeing problems. The developers started noticing some issues with all the programs that was built on C. Why? To understand this, let's take a small detour to understand what is something that we call as 3 tenets of a program. Well, let's come up with some basic vocabulary and definitions. Please note, I don't like using any word which all of us don't have the same meaning of. When I say software, you might be thinking of something, I might be thinking of something. So let us first define it. So a program we already defined. A bunch of instructions to which some input data is given, which processes the data with some business logic, which creates an output as well. That is what is your program, given to a specific device. What is an application? Very loose definition is good enough for now. Set of programs, that's good enough. A set of programs is what we call as an application. What's a software there? Very good, you are very intuitive and creative. You see, set of applications is what we call as a software. This is good enough for our understanding. Now, there is something called the 3 tenets of a program, application or software. Tenets means the truths, sattva, the essence, or the most important characteristics. Are you with me? Now, I know some of you know this discussion, but bear with me. Others who don't, I need you to answer. What do you think is the most important thing about a program? That's what are the 3 tenets. Tell me the one. What do you think is the most important thing about a program? The most important.
Syntax.
Syntax? No, I'm talking to you from the user point of view, let's say. Think from the user point of view. What is the most important thing of a program? Actually, you can think of developer point of view, it doesn't even matter. Developer or user, I say. What is the most important thing of a program? Shout out. Inputs. It should take inputs. It should take inputs. Is that the most important thing? Let's try to investigate. Is that the most important thing? Yes or no? Could be? Alarm. Alarm clock or watch. Watch program. Is it going to take inputs? Every time. Time is 2. You have to feed. Then it will say time is 2. Is it necessary? No. So taking inputs, is it the most important thing? Screensaver that you play on your mobile device or in your desktop. Is it taking inputs? But it's a program, right? So what is the most important thing I want to understand? Input is important, no doubts. But I'm not asking you the most important thing. Janika, answer me something.
It should
It should-
execute properly.
It should execute properly, it should perform some task. I got that. Very, very nicely put. It should execute properly, it should perform some task. But let's nail it down. What task should it perform? What do you mean by saying that it should perform properly? Anybody else? Very good. You are right, Janagar. I'm going to come to that. Huh? Reliability? It should be reliable. Very good. What else?
It should meet the end requirements.
Very good. You are bang on the target. I want everybody to get that. Rajanagar guys, please involve. This is not meant to be a monologue. If it is meant to be a monologue, you can do an online course. You have come here physically sitting in front of me. Let us utilize this ability. Engage with me in a discussion. Then you will also not mulg and you will understand everything well as well. So please engage. When I ask you a question, shout out. Whatever comes to your mind, there are no bad answers. Anybody? What is the most important you think about a software? It should give some benefits. It should have some people interface. I got that. But could there be some softwares which don't have a user interface? Could there be some software which don't have a user interface also and still perform some action? Yes or no? It's possible, right? Possible. So I got that. That is important, no doubts. Very good. What else? It should throughput. It should be fast in processing. I got that. But is speed the most important factor of a program? What is the number one thing that a program must do, I say? It need not be fast, it need not have beautiful jazzy UI, but it must and should do something. What is that?
Correct output. Correct output.
Correct the output, calculation. You're all right. There is nothing that you're saying which is wrong. But I want to hit a bang on target. Janagar guy and somebody else has told it properly. I want everybody to get at this. Now tell me, we were talking about an alarm clock, okay? Let's talk about a mobile. So you go and buy a mobile, in Sangeeta store. Okay? You go and say, which is the nicest, bestest mobile right now? He says, nothing like anything. You say, what? A Micromax, man. Buy this. Canvas, I don't know, 25. Okay? And you say, he shows you. This is the ultimate phone. The user interface is beautiful. Right? And it's 3D graphics it has. You touch on something and it all wobbly, it shakes. You can keep it in your pant. It can bend also. You can do all this, and the phone does not break. It's beautiful phone, rigid, rugged. You charge it one day, 10 days you don't need to charge it. Amazing. It is secure and reliable and beautiful user interface, super fast. 25 processors it has, right? Everything is fantastic. You said, Adbhuta, man, this is the ultimate tester. Give me that phone. Then the shopkeeper says, just one small thing, please keep in mind. What you can't do with this phone, make calls, receive calls, send SMS, receive SMS. Now tell me, are you still going to buy this phone? Clearly, it has beautiful UI, very fast, reliable, it calculates, it does so many things. But it doesn't do one thing, which is why you don't want it. Which is what? Very good. Remember, yes, the first tenet of any program is it should meet the requirements. A phone's requirement is what? Not that it has beautiful UI. That's not the phone's requirement. That's an addendum. The phone's requirement is it should allow you to make calls and receive calls. That's the basic thing. That's why you call the phone as a phone, man. Otherwise you would have called it Adu. Yes or no? I mean, you wouldn't have called it a phone for God's sake. You call it a phone because you can telephone, you can call, you can communicate. Bottom line, it should meet the requirements, right? I mean, it's a silly thing because you know this for sure, but I need you to put your finger onto it, right? You buy an alarm clock, beautiful alarm clock, and he says, it's a 3D alarm, when you sleep, the alarm, the clock will come into the air. In the air only you can see time. You don't need to get up and with your eyes see inside what is happening, right? Beautiful clock, except that when you keep alarm, sometimes it doesn't work. Are you going to pay money to buy this alarm clock which it doesn't? I mean, it does everything else beautifully, but it doesn't work like an alarm clock. Clearly, the first tenet of any software application or a program is it should meet the requirement. The need for which you have built the program. You have built the program for some need. It should meet that, is it not? If it doesn't meet it, then it is not at all a good program. Now, we are discussing this in lieu of understanding what happened to C programming. Remember, for about 10 years, all kinds of programs were built on C. And then I told you, people started noticing problems in C. Especially when the number of lines of code were more than 1 million lines of code. When a C program involved more than 1 million lines of code, people started noticing problems. Problems in what? Not in meeting the requirements. Clearly you can use C programming language to build a program to meet the requirements. And by the way, what type of a programming language is C? Procedural, which means, can you tell me, what is the skeleton of any C program? When you run any C program, where does it start from? Typically you are some kind of a main function. Basically it's a function to which what will be given is input. That input will be stored as global data in variables. Yes. And what will this function do? After it does its job, it will call another function. That function has also access to the data. Then once its job is done, this is what is a modularization that is given to us in C. You don't need to have one function doing everything. You split it up into a chunk of many functions. So function 1 calls function 2 calls function 3, and so on and so forth. All of them have access to global data. Finally, the final function probably will spit out an output. Very roughly, this is not exact, but at a very high level, this is kind of the structure of a C procedural program. Note, in building your modularized code, in meeting the requirements, there was never a problem in C. So where was the problem? In 2 and 3. Note, tell me now, I know every one of us know about it, but as I said, I want us to reach a consensus. If X is the amount of time it takes to build a software, X is the amount of time it takes to build a program, can you tell me how long it should be in use in relation to X at least? Like for example, if you take 1 year to construct a house, constructing a house and constructing a software program is very, very similar. So if you take 1 year to construct a house, at least how many years should that house be used? 1 year, right? 1 year. After 1 year, you take one, you start hitting. Neighbor will come and ask you, sorry, yenaito? Ade 1 year aitala. I am breaking down the house. Doesn't make any sense? It doesn't make any sense. So clearly, as rightly said, usually at a minimum, 10x to 20x. I mean, some of our houses are 40 years, 50 years. Some of your native place houses 150 years. In my native place, my original grandfather's house is 125 years old, right? It's a old Pratana the house. You see, when you're sleeping in the house, you are worried. Actually, those are the houses which are very sturdy. Having said that, any software that is built is at least must be used 10x to 20x amount of time. So if 1 year it takes 10 to 20 years, at least it should be used, isn't it? Clearly, the one who builds the software, we call the development team. The one who uses the software, we call them customers. How many customers might be there for this one program, software or application we build? Many, millions, many, right? So the same program we would probably have given to many customers. Now remember, who builds programs? Developers. And developers are dash beings, human beings. And dash is to be human, error is to be human. Which means what they will also do when they are programming? Errors. When they do errors in programming, clearly what is it that will happen when the program is being run by the customer? What will they identify? Bugs. Bugs. Yes or no? Defects. Defects, what are bugs? Defects in a program that makes the program not meet the requirements. Yes or no? Can you build any program and you can certify that this is 100% not buggy? Is it a possibility? Even experienced people, when they build code, they will induce bugs. Because who are the experienced people also? People, human beings, they will make mistakes. You will soon start seeing that even in one line of code, we will make some 10 mistakes. We have great talent, man. Yes. Clearly now, these bugs or defects will be identified by customers when they are using our program. So what should we be able to do? Solve it, right? Fix it, isn't it? So to give you an analogy, I know some of you know this, please bear with me. But just to give you an analogy, let's imagine what you have done is you and I are architects, let's say, and we have built a house. We have built a house which is the world's most expensive house. Which is the world's most expensive house, by the way? General knowledge, man. Not White House, man. White House is not a house, okay? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, actually, Ambani's house, right? It's called Attila, right? It costs only $2 billion. One money, man. Immediate question. So if you ask, somebody who is new to the city, it costs $2 billion to construct one house. Sir, ಎಷ್ಟು ಜನ ಇರ್ತಾರೆ? Right? Okay. Only 4 people. It has only 40 floors, you see. Only for 4 people. They have 250 servants, helpers, basically. 4 people, man. Yeah. So imagine 40 floor building. Imagine we are the architects of it. Okay? When you can imagine, no, imagine big. So we have now built this beautiful $2 billion house. Okay? Now, one day Ambani calls us. Hey, architect. In the 32nd floor, behind all the rooms, there is a storeroom. In that storeroom, the bulb is not working. It is acting as a disco light. Means when you switch on also, pukka, 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 pukka. Disco light. Okay? Now, what has he reported? He has reported a bug. The bulb is supposed to switch on when you switch it on, and it is supposed to switch off when you switch it off. But it is not working like that. Even when you switch off, some puk light. When you switch on, it is not switching on properly. So they report a bug. We got to go and fix it. So we will go. Ambani only has called, means we will go. We'll go to the 32nd floor. Behind all the rooms, there is a Chotu storeroom. Then we see the bulb. Yes, the bug is correct. First we have to reproduce the bug. So we'll reproduce the bug and see that yes, it is not working properly. Once we identify the source and the issue, we will fix it, right? Imagine, we cannot fix it immediately, we need some extra equipment. So what we will do? We will drop a new line of electrical wire and give a new bulb. And we will rewire the switches such that the earlier line is not used, the newer bulb is used, the newer line is used. We have given a small enhancement or a small bug fix. Now, think, and I want you to answer this question, alright? Now when you switch on this bulb, clearly, this fix that we have done or this small enhancement we have done, we might have made a mistake in this also. We are talented people, I told you already. Even in this we might have made a mistake, isn't it? Now tell me, think carefully and answer. What is the maximum negative impact this new fix should have on the system, which is acceptable? Long sentence, follow this carefully. What is the maximum negative impact this new fix should have on the entire system, which is acceptable? Did you understand the question? Hello? I am the architect, I have made a fix, man. I have made a gub fix. I have made a mistake, alright? I have induced a bug. Now my question to you is, because I have made a mistake, when he switches on the bulb, it is not supposed to work correctly, right? So there will be a negative impact or not? That negative impact, maximum negative impact which is acceptable is what?
Bulb should not.
Very good, very good.
Only the bulb should not.
Very good, very good. It should not switch on. Like I am asking you, if you switch on, is it okay if the entire 40-story damar, the entire building only explodes? Is that acceptable? For all the people outside, hey, ಎಷ್ಟು ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿ damar ಅಂತಾರೆ. Clearly that is not acceptable. Short circuit. Entire full, all circuitry, all cars, everything, pat. Is that acceptable? Entire lighting of the entire floor or the floors go away. Is that acceptable? No. What is acceptable? We have made a mistake, pa. We have made a mistake and we have tried to fix it. If we make a mistake even in that fix, what is acceptable is only that fix must not work. You try to switch on, that bulb should not switch on. Why it has to affect the other things, is it not? Now, as silly as this sounds in the real world, in software development world, especially in procedural programming applications which are built, there is a big problem in fixing the bugs over the period of time that it is used. What do we call this as is? Maintainability. The second tenet of a software or a program or an application is it should be easy to maintain. In that, C-built, procedural-built programming applications are very difficult. So, especially when your code base becomes more, it is easy to meet the requirement, not so simple to maintain. What do you mean not so simple to maintain? What I mean is, the one who maintains the software, remember this, I'm sure you know, usually the one who builds the software and maintains the software are not the same people. The one who builds will go away to other teams. Then somebody else is hired to act as a maintainer, as a support engineer. He is the guy who is supposed to maintain by whenever the customer reports bugs. That means he needs to understand how these functions are working. He needs to understand how these functions are interacting with global data. No, not. The problem in the procedural world is, imagine, if there are some statements in your function, tell me, which is the most powerful feature of C? Pointers. Which is the most difficult topic to learn and master in C? Pointers only. Correct, no? Most powerful also, most complex also. So you will have star, P is equal to something, etc. As they say, the more star you put, the more stars you see. Correct, no? Star, one star artha agalla. ಎರಡು ಮೂರು star ಏನಾಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆಯೋ ಏನು, isn't it? Bottom line. Clearly it is complex to understand pointers. Now imagine, I am a new fresher who has come in to support this software, maintain it. Somebody reports a bug. There is some star P equal to something. I will say, ಯಾಕೆ ಎರಡು ಬೇಕು star? I make a change. If I make a change to some statement, can it affect this global data or not? It can affect the global data. Now, if it affects the global data, remember, who depends on global data is not only this function, but all other functions, man. That means if I make a mistake, not only will my function not work correctly, all other functions which were working correctly, that also stops working. This is huchness, man. Don't you think? I mean, I added one extra bulb and to some small wire. If I switch on, not only will this bulb not work correctly, fridge in the first floor stops working. How is that even related? That's the problem with your procedural world of development. Are you understanding this? There is a very tight dependency between the functions and the global data. If any function affects the global data badly, the other functions will also stop working. That is this acceptable? Not at all acceptable, which is why the problem was seen in your procedural world, especially in your C application development. Having said that, over this period of time, what else will happen to the business? Remember, you are building a program means to satisfy some need. There is a business requirement, but will the business requirement remain the same over this period of time? Keeps on changing. With new changes, what is it we should be able to do? Enhance. So enhanceability, it should be easy to enhance, which means I should be able to easily add new functions, for example. But again, what is the problem in your procedural world? If I build a new function and introduce this in between, this F1 and F2, F1 calls Fx, Fx calls F2. Again, this Fx can affect the global data badly. Again, the other functions which have a dependency on the global data can stop working, which basically means what is also difficult to do is your enhanceability. Very difficult to enhance. So I'll repeat again, using the C programming language, the most powerful programming language. When has been C the most powerful language? It was then or now? What are we talking about? C is most powerful programming language when? 1980s or now? Now. Even now. Understand this. The most powerful programming language of all time is C, because literally you can control the entire system. You can communicate and ask the OS to do anything for you. You can communicate with any peripheral that is there. There is no other programming language that gives you more power than C. That's the problem. The problem with C is it is very powerful. There are two problems. First problem is it is procedural, which means because it is procedural, any small change we make, other things can stop working. Any new thing we add, it might affect other things which are working. So which means maintainability, enhanceability is the problem. Also, the power with C is only the problem. Why? Just to give you an analogy. Imagine living in India versus living in America. In America, what you can easily go to a Shatti Angdi, Shatti shop and buy, which you can't buy in India? Gun, man, gun. Gun, right? So you can go and buy a gun. You know that, right? Anybody can buy a gun. I mean, of course, you need to be a citizen, you need to have some proof. But literally, you can go to any shop, there are gun shops. Literally, like Kirana stores, there are gun shops. I have seen it, I have gone inside one, I have shot some guns also there. They don't ask anything, man. They have big, big machine guns and all that. You can take that shoot, you know. Yeah. So you can buy those guns. So imagine Imagine I have gone and bought a gun. Now, gun, is it a powerful thing or not? You very powerful, man. I mean, imagine, suddenly somebody comes in front of me. What could I potentially simply do if I'm carrying a gun in a bucket? Suddenly somebody comes and somebody scares me. Simply I may take kill that man. For all you know, he is my relative only. Is that possible or not? If a kalla comes inside your house, or a neighbor is crossing your yard in your house, in the middle of the night, suddenly somebody is crossing. Shoot. Possible or not? I'm sure you would have heard of different stories in America, right? Like one day one person went into a movie. It was a couple of years ago story this is. He went to watch Dark Knight Rises. Dark Knight. You know, Batman movie. He went there and don't ask me why, but he carried a gun in his pocket. Okay, behind the pocket he's carrying. And with all the excitement of watching the movie, he suddenly shifted. Dishcam. In his pocket only the gun shot. And you know whom it shot? Him only, man. One bullet through his ass. Okay? And blood is, it started bleeding. And then he got up and he, for all the people who were sitting there, he said, sorry, and he went admitted himself to a hospital. I'm sure you would have seen other stories. They're all bad stories, but right now it seems funny. A 2-year-old boy, he was sitting in a shopping cart when his mother was taking him. Shopping cart, you know, they have all these carts where you can throw all these things. It's there in all the malls, isn't it? So the mom was carrying the baby, 2-year-old boy, in the shopping cart when she's collecting all the things she wants to buy for her house. Don't ask me why, but she had a bag, which she had put in the shopping cart. In that bag there is gun. Gun is loaded. I mean, which person should keep a loaded gun next to a 2-year-old baby? Don't ask me why, but this is what she did. What do you think the Chotu boy did? Took the gun. Mummy, nanage heltiya? Without obvious malicious intent. The mother, the moment she came, dishcam, she shot her. Literally shot her only cold, point blank range. The father was in Pakad row. He also came. What will boy do? Papa Bhartyaba. He shot the father also. Both of them hospitalized, man. Tell me, in India, is this a possibility at all? Very impossible, yeah. Because the biggest or the max weapon you can have is one coal. Correct, no? Even if one kalla comes and rapa, you hit him. Can he die? Impossible. I'm telling you, with great power, Spider-Man says, with great power comes great responsibility. You have to now be responsible in carrying the gun properly. In India, no power, no responsibility. Even though it's a silly argument, it's very important because in the sea world, not only because of its procedural nature, maintainability and enhanceability was a problem. The problem with sea is it gives you complete power over your underlying system. You can ask the OS to do anything. You can interact with any power peripherals. Using pointers, you can access any part of your memory. Even parts of the memory which you should not access, you can access. That means it's very easy to write buggy code, very easy to write malicious code, very easy to write code which will bring down the entire system. I can write a simple C program to point to Windows system folder and delete it. Not only that program crash, entire Windows only will crash. Very easy to write bad code in your C world because C is very powerful. This was the time in the 1980s then people started thinking, oh my God, this is posing as a problem. Clearly, we need a programming language now, which is probably not as powerful as C, but which is also not only going to help us in meeting the requirements, it should be easy to maintain, easy to. People understood the problem was not with C, but was with the procedural way of development. That's why what got invented, object-oriented programming languages. We'll talk about this tomorrow in detail, but basically a new way of thinking and developing code, not in the procedural way, but in the object-oriented way. In the next session, we will have a very simple, very fundamental discussion where we will understand how object-oriented programming helps in solving problems. All right? But having said that, object-oriented programming languages were invented, and using object-oriented programming languages, you can meet the requirements, easy to maintain, easy to enhance. I'll prove it to you how it is in the next session. Having said that, they invented this, and of course, there was already C, they introduced object-oriented programming and they released it as C++. But other problems of C were still there with C++. It is too powerful, difficult to handle. You have to know the entire system, how it is working, etc. Then came ADA, then came Smalltalk, and all these different OO languages got released in the market. They were all very popular, by the way, not as popular as C and C++. At this point in time, we are now in the 90s. At this point in time, another thing happened in the internet. Another thing happened in the industry. That is, there was an explosion of internet. Until then, internet was not used by laymen like you and me. Suddenly, internet started being used by all the citizenry of the country. And at the same time, what got created in a huge way are called micro devices. What are micro devices? They are devices with their own processor, memory and OS. But they are small, not like your computer. Like your fridge, which has a processor, a car, which has a processor, a phone, which has a processor. All these got created in the 1990s. And wherever there is a processor, memory and OS with peripherals, what is it we want to be able to do? What is it we want to be able to do? Write a program. But the micro devices physical hardware is different. OS is also different. So suddenly, what became a new need, new requirement, which was not there until 1990s, was sitting on a Windows machine, I want to build and create a program and test it. But where it should be able to run? Micro devices. Different hardware capable devices, different OS capable devices. Are you with me? At this point in time, what was conveniently born and released to the market was your Java language. Are you understanding the story, guys? So the story, if you understand it like this, it will stick in your mind and you will remember. And you should remember this. Why did Java come into picture in the first place? And what advantages of Java made it, or what features of Java made it advantageous for everybody to start using? And how has Java come to be to the point where it is today, right? So clearly, Java was released at that point in time, and to introduce Java. By the way, which company invented the Java programming language and created it? Sun Microsystems. And who is called the father of Java, or the founder of Java? JG, James Gosling, right? Actually, he's just one of them, of a team, right? Ken Arnold and a couple of other guys were there. Anyway, James Gosling was the lead who built this programming language. So what point was this Java released? After C was there for a decade, after O languages were there for close to a decade, and that at that point in time they released Java. And they said, and the vision of this language was using this language. Obviously, this language was built as an object-oriented programming language. So the vision was you can build applications using Java, which one is easy to build to meet the requirement, very easy to maintain, very easy also to enhance, without all the problems of your C and C++. But not only that, they created this programming language, and to introduce this programming language to the world, please understand, there were about 20 million C, C++ developers in 1990s. 1990s only 20 million C, C++ developers were there. And when Java programming language was created, who is the customer of a programming language? The customer is developer, right? The developers. Who uses programming language? The developers. So clearly when this new language is released, all these 20 million developers should be told about this new language. And importantly, not only told, they should start using this new language now. Even if Java is the ultimatest language, but nobody uses it, there is no use. Clearly, to introduce this Java language to the C, C++ developers, James Gosling wrote a white paper. White paper nothing but means document. A document which captured at the highest level the advantages of Java. Are you with me? He wrote a new white paper which contain at a very high level the advantages of Java, which many of you already know. The first thing he mentioned, we'll talk about this after a small break, but just to put on the points. The first thing he mentioned about Java, are you able to piece together the entire story? No? Yes or no, guys? You are able to understand. Java has now been created, but James Gosling wants to introduce Java to the world of developers. To do that, he wrote a document which got published on the internet. So he said, first of all, Java programming language is simple and object oriented. Unlike your C++, where you can still build functions using procedural programming, in Java you cannot build a procedural program. All programs are object oriented. Second, importantly, you know this already. What is the most important advantage of Java which captured the essence of or the mind share of the masses is platform independence, architecturally neutral, or Java is said to be portable. Are you with me? Then he said, we'll talk about all of this, each of these points in a slightly detailed manner after the break. So then he said, Java is said to be secure, dynamic, robust, multi-threaded, and what is this? I-18N, internationalization. That means Java is said to be internationalized. What it means, we will talk about it in a minute, in some time. So to introduce Java and the advantages of Java to the world, James Gosling wrote a white paper capturing the essence and the benefits of Java. These are some of the points. I'll share the white paper also with you for you to go through. Having said that, at a very high level, these are the points. Now, usually speaking, if you want to know the advantages of a phone, advantages of a TV, advantages of a bike or a car, when can you really talk about the advantages is usually when? By looking at it, can you tell the advantages? Usually when can you tell about the advantages? Only after you have used it. But having said that, James Gosling wanted to make an impact on all the people who read this white paper. Without even using, they should be able to get the understanding of the benefits. Then is when they will learn Java, is it not? Because Java is not like C, C++. It's not built on another language. It's a brand new programming language. That means if anybody had to use Java, they had to learn it. Why would anybody learn something new? Think about it. 20 million people already know C, C++. They're already trained, experienced developers. Why would they come to learn Java? Only if it promised so many new features which earlier languages did not have. Are you with me? Just to give you a case in point, and then we go for a small break. Imagine, sake of silly discussion, imagine that a big company like, I don't know, Tata enters footwear. All of us wear footwear, your shoes and sandals and slippers and whatnot. Imagine Tata enters into footwear and they say, newspaper ads, amazing footwear, technologically very advanced. Why don't you buy our Tata footwear? Don't buy Bata, buy Tata. Now, and they say all the benefits of this, etc. My question to you is, all of us have footwear, many pairs of it probably. Clearly, are we going to throw all our pairs of footwear and go and buy Tata footwear just because it is technically superior or advanced? I want you to tell me. Are you going to do that? No. Obviously not, is it not? So my question to you is this. When do you think will we still throw our footwear and go and stand in queue to buy Tata footwear? When do you think we will do that? So clearly there should be some benefits Tata footwear has which our footwear does not. Let's try to think one or two small silly examples, alright? Tell me, if it is free, as said, if it is free, Tata footwear, our amazing, world's most amazing thing, and it is free, will we all go stand in queue and buy it? I don't know about you, most of us might not. The moment something is free, see, remember this, nothing comes free. There is always a catch somewhere, you see. The moment something is free, we doubt its authenticity, we doubt its quality. And clearly if we have long queues, we are not interested. Just because it is free, it is not enough. We don't even mind paying money. and buying, even if it is more expensive than what we have, provided it gives me some extra features. Can you think and tell me, what features if a slipper, a shoe has? I and you will forget Java, Goa and stand in queue to buy this shoe. Think. Just, creative thinking is what I want. What feature? Just if it all the feature, the advertisement says, this is amazingly strong shoe. Is that enough? To throw our footwear and buy this Tata footwear? Not enough. What do you think should it be? Comfortable. So very comfortable. Hakondil derong ansutte. Even if you wear it, you will feel that you are not wearing it. Is that enough? Remember this. Iterative advantages. Meaning already you are wearing some shoe that is comfortable. Your Tata shoe is more comfortable. Doesn't mean we'll throw our earlier shoe. No. Iterative benefits is not enough. There should be radical creative benefits. Like what? Quality. Grip. You are not thinking. I want you to do creative thinking. Huh? It's an electric shoe. Piezoelectric shoe. Very good. What will happen because of that? Very good. So, you keep your mobile phone in your pocket and you walk around and automatically your mobile phone will get charged. Is this a nice feature or not? Now we'll think, parvagilve. I don't care about, comfort I want. I want strength. I want quality. But I want some extra things. Like this, piezoelectric. Is it not? Let's better this. The color of the shoe will change depending on the pant and shirt you wear. If at all something like that is there, would it not be catchy? Definitely. Color. You think of the color, pink shoe, right? And then green shoe. Amazing. Take even one step forward. You wear this shoe, you will glide in air. You don't need to walk. Like rocket booster. You go anywhere. Now tell me, if such a shoe was there, would we forget about